was 12 when this happened. My brother, older cousin, and I grew up on a reservation near a mountain. There's several towns and a city just 5 miles away from our hometown, but as teens we played by an old creek near my house. In May of 2008, we spent a couple of hours having a water gun fight there. As I was filling my gun, I saw what looked like a bear's left arm from the shoulder joint. It was covered in brown fur, rotten green meat, and a little blood. I pulled it out of the mud, and it was exactly like a human hand. It had a palm with fingers and nails, but much larger. I screamed and fetched my brother and cousin so that they could look at it too. They wanted to bring it home, but we vomited repeatedly due to the stench. It was also heavy, so we took turns carrying it until we finally were able to show our uncle and grandmother. They were angry with us for touching it, let alone taking it, so our uncle put it into his wheelbarrow and walked away. He returned a few hours later, without the arm. Our grandmother told us a story that she had heard from her father. She told us to stay away from the mountains because they've been occupied longer than we've been on this earth. She didn't believe the story, so she went toward the mountains to look for berries and tree sap. But when she got closer, she saw what looked like 4 large bears standing on the mountainside, and they were walking like men. She called them Bigfoot. I never spoke of it or even mentioned it again until a couple of years ago, when I asked my grandmother what she thought happened to the rest of that arm's body. She said that Bigfoot are like bears, extremely territorial and aggressive when scared or threatened. Her grandfather used to burn their bones whenever one died. That way, the white people wouldn't find them and hunt the rest. Years later, 2021, my cousin and I returned to that mountain for a hunting trip, but we only found a giant teepee hut with thick brown hair inside. I showed my grandmother the pictures to see if she remembered anything similar, and she did. She even had 4 Polaroid pictures of her own, showing other giant teepee huts, and one photo with 3 large bear-like creatures walking upright like a human. She made me promise to never tell or show anyone the photos. She doesn't think anyone would believe us either way, but worries for them, I think. We've spent the majority of our lives in the bush, hunting and fishing. I'm still questioning things so much. Life is different now. My people call it Bigfoot, or some of you might call it Sasquatch. Either way, it's just like another person. They won't bother us if we don't bother them. On February 27th, 2023, my friend was driving home from work down a country road between 5 and 6 p.m. He saw an unknown creature less than a mile from my house. It was at the road's edge, as if it were about to cross. It was pitch black, very furry, with a bobbed tail. It had a pit bull's face, jowls, ears. It was slender but muscular, and it stood on all 4s. It saw my friend but paid him no attention. Instead, it turned around slowly and leapt back into the woods like a frog, with its legs splayed in opposite directions. It was roughly the size of a Great Dane, but he couldn't identify much else. This was in a wooded area next to a small bayou, and there's a nook that leads into the woods. That same night, I heard strange thuds and wood bowing sounds around midnight, like something was climbing a wooden structure. Not sure if it's related, but 6 years ago, I saw something strange leap between one section of the woods to another, across the highway, about a half mile from my house. It was black, hairy, and ape-like. 3 years ago, my wife and I heard tapping on the window around midnight. We laughed at first, but my cousin, who lived across the street, called and said something big was in our yard, and he said that it had run into the woods. We investigated and heard it rustling through trees, but never saw it. The next morning, there was a large, bare, humanoid footprint outside the window that we heard the tapping at. That same year, a friend and I were hanging out, and I saw something strange walk into my cousin's yard. It was large, black, and furry. It walked on all fours, and it looked like a pig, but we couldn't determine what it was. It had a dog-like snout with the stature and size of a hog or a large bear cub. It sniffed a circle around his house and went back into the woods. Last year, I was driving on my road at night, and there's a curve about a half a mile where my friend saw the creature. In the curve, my headlights shined into the woods and revealed eyes shining 6 feet off the ground. I stopped the car to examine it, but I didn't see anything else. I only noticed the smell of rotting meat as it flooded the car, and I promptly left. Not too long after that incident, I was outside at midnight, heard a strange noise in my cousin's yard. I shined a flashlight over there, saw a shiny pair of eyes at average height. It looked at me and continued walking toward the woods. In my experience, most things come to a stop when you spotlight them, but not this thing. I continued to shine the light into the woods, and it returned 15 feet further down the tree line, where it stared back at me before turning back. I continued shining the light and caught it once more in the same place. It looked at me for another moment and turned away. I didn't see it again, but I had an eerie feeling that it was sentient. For the past 2 weeks, my entire property has stank of skunk. Our house gets sprayed from time to time, but the smell usually dissipates after 2 days. This time, it's been almost 2 weeks, and the smell is even pungent by the road. My house seems to be the epicenter. The smell extends roughly 100 yards around my house in all directions. I considered all of these instances to be strange coincidences until my friend saw that creature yesterday. Now I'm not ruling them out as possible encounters. Any and all guesses as to what the nature of this creature is are appreciated.